You are listening to the Built to Grow podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Built to Grow podcast. I am your host, Tim Lyons, in studio with the Dean of Drive, Randy Angston. What's up, guy?
Good morning and happy Friday.
That's right, it is Friday. See, we're losing track of the days. Hey, we got a special guest today. We wanted to bring in Adam Trenk, the Tank. He's an attorney, a partner at Rose Law Group here in Scottsdale, Arizona. He is going to talk to us today about, the landlord lease agreements. He represents both the tenant and the landlords in a lot of situations, whoever gives them the money first, I guess. And with all these changes going on, I wanted to bring in Adam. Randy actually brought it up. I wanted to bring Adam in to kind of help us navigate these uncharted waters with what's going on today in the community of what this COVID thing is all about and how we can help our gym owners kind of hopefully get out of this ahead. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cool. And so how long have you two known each other?
Oh, good question.
It's hard to put a start date on that relationship.
I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere
Several
there?
years,
yeah,
for sure.
It's been a long run.
Several years. Okay. So Adam, tell me about you a little bit, man. You ride horses, I hear.
I do, yeah. I've been doing that my entire life. I grew up in the great cowboy state of New Jersey, where my grandfather was involved in the thoroughbred racing industry before I was born, and so my family had me involved in horses from a young age, and I took to it and decided to make a life for myself out west when I graduated high school.
There you go.
And that's actually, I met Randy in Cave Creek, where I think we both live now.
Yep.
Very cool. And did you guys, Randy just got 2 horses.
I did.
Did you get them from Adam?
I did not get them from Adam, no, but Adam recently picked up Billy Cook saddles. So I went to him directly to saddle the horses. And so he equipped both of my horses with nice Billy Cook
That's
saddles.
a world I know nothing about, man. I know my daughter's doing riding lessons. She's all into the horses, but I don't know, man. I've never owned a horse. That's crazy stuff. So, guys,
stick around. We'll give you the orientation.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So, Adam, man, you've been already. You told us that you've worked with a client. We won't mention names. That you've already you basically negotiated on their behalf and got a smooth deal for the gym owner.
Well, I hope so. These are unprecedented times. We don't necessarily know when we're going to hit the bottom of this thing. In other words, when is the economy going to stop tanking and things will start to stabilize and recover? But in that particular case, we got a 3-month moratorium on rent payments and an agreement that the lease would then be extended by 3 months, and then they waived some of the common area maintenance charges and agreed to reduce the base rent for the next 12 months once they restart payment. Now, that may turn out to be a smoking deal. If the economy is able to turn back on, it may be one of those things we have to go back and try and renegotiate if this goes on much longer. But in that particular instance, my client wanted to seize the moment. The governor of Arizona recently issued an executive order putting a moratorium on all commercial evictions.
Yes,
and so we wanted to get right in there, take advantage of that circumstance, and try and see if we could negotiate a deal, at least I think to give this client some peace of mind in the interim.
Well, that's awesome. So a lot of unknowns right now. So most every gym in the U.S., I mean, even in Australia where we have listeners, Canada, they're closed, right? They're shut down.
The UK.
So we need to really talk about like positioning right now because, historically it's always been the tenant versus the landlord, depending on your relationship. But it's always like who's got the upper hand. Usually it's the landlord. They write the contracts, you sign to the agreement, and it's usually the tenant's just shelling out cash. And one of the big things that I did, which I don't recommend anybody else do, is look at all the damn money you've spent with the landlord. No wonder why, right, they're the landlord, right? So, I mean, obviously, if you can own your building, we do have some gym owners that listen that own their own building, so this isn't going to pertain to them. But let's talk about positioning here for a second. In the current circumstances, I almost feel like the tables are turned a little bit where the tenants are a little bit more, they have more leverage in the deal, personally. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that dynamic has been created by the circumstances in the sense that without the tenant, the landlord also starves. And so the landlord has to do whatever they can to help prop up the tenant's business during these uncertain times so that everybody can recover together when the economy, powers back on.
Okay, so in the past, I don't know. I don't want to paint the picture of these landlords are bad people, but you would hear the thing like the gym owner struggling, and sorry guys,
It's a contract, right?
We're going to turn around and replace you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now that's not going to be able to happen. Obviously, the businesses can't even operate, so it's not like you're easily replaceable anymore as the tenant. So, here in Arizona, they did this whole what do you call it? Moratorium? What is it? What did you say?
The governor of Arizona, Doug Ducey, issued an executive order. I think it was at the start of this week, essentially saying that there will be no commercial evictions through May. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that tenants won't be liable for their rent through May. That's obviously on a case-by-case basis, and it's up to the landlords and the tenants to work that out. But I believe what that does is two things. Number one, it gives everybody a little bit of breathing room, and it also sets the stage for these contracts, these lease agreements, to be revisited by the parties who are bound by them under these circumstances, right? I mean, nobody could have foreseen that the entire economy would shut down and that all gym owners would have to close their doors due to a public health issue of this scale. And so, as you were stating before, historically, landlords would say, look, if you're not paying your rent, tough cookies and get out and we'll replace you. Well, in this dynamic, that incentive isn't there, because if we start seeing evictions of gyms or other small businesses in a mass scale, who's coming in to fill these spaces? So the landlords have to recognize that their tenants are their partners now. And I think that their attitudes will adjust appropriately in order to make sure that everybody can survive this together.
Yeah, and I know a lot of we just changed the name, by the way, guys, from Marketing Talk Group with Fitness Professionals is now Business Talk Group with Fitness Professionals, because that's really what it's turned into.
Yeah,
we're not talking marketing now. Now we're talking strategy and business, this kind of stuff. So a lot of the gyms that we've been working with have already kind of started the negotiation, talking, and we did here as well. Hey, let's talk to the landlord. Let's let them know about the situation and being closed. Obviously, they know now, but early on, we saw this coming. I sent an email literally 3 weeks ago to my landlord just saying, hey, heads up, we're going to try to do everything we can here, but guess this may get worse. And sure enough, it did. So a lot of the gyms have started kind of talking to their landlords. What do you recommend as far as the steps to maybe get a deal like you did with your client?
So there's several steps in this process, and it can all happen rather quickly, and some of them you can do concurrent with each other. But the first thing that everybody needs to do is pull out their lease, right? Take out your lease agreement that defines your obligations and your rights with your landlord and the use of that space, and read through it. What do you owe? When do you owe it? What are the remedies in the event of a default? Is there a force majeure clause? Do you have a cure period? What are your notice requirements? And, in some cases, you may not know, who do you really need to communicate with? Is there a management company? Do you communicate with the landlord directly? I mean, let's figure out exactly who we should be dealing with. So all of that information should be in your lease if you've got a well-written lease. Once you have identified all of those deal points, if you will, the next thing would be to evaluate your own situation. What are you capable of? Sure. Because it doesn't do you any good to get in touch with your landlord if you don't know where you want to go, right? Otherwise, you're really just wasting each other's time, and God knows we've got enough to deal with right now that we don't need to be bothering our landlords or anybody for that matter unless we have something substantive to say. So, are you able to pay 50% of your rent? Are you able to pay 10% of your rent? What will be helpful to you? And again, we haven't hit the bottom of this, I don't think yet, and so it is difficult to plan and predict, but if you have a pretty good hold on your own finances and you know what your business model has been historically and you see a path out of it for yourself, you should be able to model what your finances are going to look like and be able to predict what you can afford to pay your landlord. Right. Because it's not reasonable to say you're going to pay him nothing forever. Yeah. But maybe as it was in this particular case, maybe it is reasonable to say I'm going to pay you nothing for a couple of months, and then when the economy ticks back on, as we hope it will 90 days from now, will restart at such and such a level. Yeah. So that's step two. Get a grasp on your own on your own personal finances or your business's finances. And then of course step three would be to reach out and try and just have that dialogue. Depending on the type of center that you're in, like if you're in a big retail center and there are dozens of other tenants, you might be at the back of a list. If you're in a small center with 3 or 4 businesses and, it's like a mom and pop type landlord situation, we're not dealing with a big corporate REIT or something of that, you might get somebody's attention right away. Be patient. Everybody's overwhelmed right now. The anxiety of this situation is affecting individuals, across the spectrum. Some people are dealing with it well, others are not. Everybody's overwhelmed. Kids are home from school, et cetera. So just be patient.
Yeah, okay.
Give somebody 24, 48 hours to respond and then follow up. Don't badger them because, at least in my experience as an attorney, when people start to hammer me with emails or phone calls and they don't give me time to respond to them, I just sort of deliberately put them at the back of the list because it's rude,
Yeah,
sure.
We've all got something to deal with. So be patient, reach out, and then from a negotiating standpoint, what I like to do is I like to listen first. You don't learn anything while you're talking, so where you want to go. But you've gotten in touch with the landlord. Obviously, they're going to anticipate what the subject matter is. In other words, they know that you're calling to try and work out something on your, rearrange your rent. Listen, because they may be willing to give you way more than you anticipated or way more than you think you need. So just listen to what they have to say, and then have a dialogue. And then, depending on where it goes, I would suspect, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I think almost 99% of these situations are going to resolve themselves short of some kind of litigation because that's not going to behoove anybody. Yeah. And the most important thing after that is to get whatever the terms of that arrangement are in writing so that, if the economy should turn on quicker than we anticipate, the landlord doesn't change his mind about what he was willing to give to you.
Good point.
Real good point.
Now, do you feel, and we talked about it before, do you think it's in the best interest of the gym owners to get an attorney like yourself to work on their behalf? Does it give them more leverage, or is it like just, hey, let's work it out together?
Well, when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. I'm an attorney, so I would have to recommend that everybody go to pick up that tool out of their toolbox.
Sure.
And so I would say, yes, you should contact an attorney to help you evaluate these things. And in many cases, you'll spend either several hundred to a couple $1,000s to get this done, and you could end up saving tens of thousands of dollars in rent and the emotional relief that you'll get from having these things resolved quickly and done well and documented properly is probably priceless. You just kind of check that off the list and move on with the other things that the COVID-19 crisis is presenting to you.
And that brings up a good point, too, because this is a situation we're working with gym owners, and one of the problems constantly is just the number of hats, right? So, in the given time, Tim, you're dealing with a million different things happening. It might be nice to just hand this to somebody who this is your specialty, right? Peace of mind, they're on your team. You know that they're going to do whatever's in your power to make that agreement the best for your client. That's a perfect thing to offload. Makes sense. Given the opportunity, if you can.
Well, we've got an expression in our family too that is, let the plumber fix the sink, right? This guy's trained to do this job. Don't get underneath there and start messing around with, wrenches and whatever. You're going to end up making the leak worse. So in this particular case, I think you're right? If as an entrepreneur, a business owner, gym owner, whatever your business is, you have so many things to deal with right now. You can check this off the list and free up some bandwidth so that you can deal with other things by having a professional come in and do it for you. And in this particular instance, I don't think it's cost effective. Like I said, a couple $1,000s, my hourly rate is high, and it's $415 an hour. But we have associates at the firm who bill in the high twos who would be more than capable of doing the lease review and helping get me be prepared for a 15-minute conversation with the landlord. And you will, that's going to pay dividends, particularly if you're able to get like your common area maintenance charges either reduced or eliminated for a period of time, get your base rent reduced, or forborne for a period of time, and then I also think that having an extension built into whatever your lease workout is good because everybody wants a chance to recover from this.
Yeah. If
you only have a year or two left on your lease, your opportunity to recover may be cut short, but so now's a good time to think about that also.
That's good stuff. And I would agree. I think, like you mentioned, Randy, just hand that off, peace of mind. It's going to get done right. And by listening, right, you're probably going to get a lot more than if you just go ahead and try to do it yourself.
Well, yeah. You got somebody who knows exactly what to say at the right. Hell, anyone listening to this is already Googling some of the terms you're using. It's just, you know what I mean?
What is forbearance? Siri, what does forbearance mean? No,
you know what I mean. But that's the seat that you're sitting in, and that's the person that you want in that seat, as opposed to a gym owner who. No offense, guys, but sometimes all of us are like, well, I don't know how the hell to go address that. Like,
sure.
We're great at what we do, but we don't always know the right things to say in other
One
situations.
of the big points and takeaways of what's going on right now is that you can't count on anybody else to help you.
Amen.
In like the government wise, like if you're kind of sitting on your heels here and you're kind of waiting for this PPP to come in and maybe this EIDLs might come in. I'm hearing this money's running out. Like,
well, today, the conversation in our business group, like, have we seen a gym get funded yet?
Not one.
I have not seen a single gym actually
So
receive the funds
yet. If you're not being proactive,
Yep.
like talking to the landlord, hire an attorney like Adam, and going out and getting these deals done. So maybe when the government comes through, you might be still there. But if not, like you're really, you could be shooting yourself in the foot.
You're sitting on
big
your
time.
hands, just waiting for something to come along and save you. And I don't think that's going to happen. One of the things Adam said beforehand that I want to touch on too is your landlords want to work with you. You know, you mentioned this because of their situation as well. They're going to turn around and try and do the same things.
Right.
But if you want to get into that a little bit, who do they turn to for relief?
I mean, I don't know, pick a percentage, but a very high percentage of retail space or commercial space is going to be financed, right? The landlords are going to be having taken advantage of the power of leverage, and their properties are financed. They don't own them outright. And so they owe payments in one form or another to a bank, presumably, or some sort of financial institution. I mean, historically, and I don't want to, I'm making predictions here, and I probably shouldn't do that, but I don't think it's so far-fetched that the next round of government assistance that comes is going to be to the financial institutions in some form of a bailout. I mean, we saw in the last recession, in a recession that was caused by the bank's own activity, there was a tremendous bailout. This is circumstances beyond their control, so that's coming. I think that the landlord's definitely feeling pressure in terms of making their debt service payments, but I cannot imagine a world where the financial institution is not willing to work with them also, because again, the alternative for them is a non-performing asset. So wouldn't they rather work it out than, have to figure out down the road to foreclose on this piece of property that, may ultimately be valueless, particularly if all the tenants have vacated.
Yeah,
it,
right.
So I think that will come, and it may be months from now. It could even be a year from now. Who knows? Just depending on when we do reach the bottom of this health crisis, and the economy is able to start to recover. But I think that's going to happen, and that's part of the conversation, part of the dialogue that I would have with the landlord is, have you reached out to your bank? What are your debt service payments? Obviously, we don't want you to go into foreclosure as a consequence of working with us. Let's all work together.
Yeah.
Tell us what you need, and that's, again, why you listen at the first part of the conversation when you talk to the landlord, because they're going to tell you what they need, which is going to help you figure out how to get to yes.
Perfect.
And I'm seeing a lot of that too. It's almost this is obviously completely new for all of us. We've never seen forced closures of businesses by a government mandate, and then a handout saying, hey, we're going to come help you, but with no timeline, right? So given the current situation, it's nice to know that your landlord is probably on your side too. They understand what you're going through, and it's more of that community of feel like, hey, how can we get through this together? Same way we turn to our clients, right? We didn't ask our clients to just stop paying us, and we don't want our clients to stop paying us, but we're going to have a conversation with our clients.
Right.
What can we do through this time so that I don't have to stop paying my employees, close our doors, and we're here in the future for you.
Yeah.
It's the same conversation.
It's a domino effect.
It is.
It starts at the client level. They can't come into the gym, work out. Stop paying the gym. The gym's out of cash. Well, landlord, I owe you money. How can we negotiate? Landlord to the bank. How can we negotiate? It just goes all the way down.
A trickle-up effect.
It's pretty trickle-up effect. Yeah, good point.
It is interesting, but I like the fact that just that dialogue, that open communication. Hey, understand where you are in the situation. Don't assume that your landlord is going to be okay with a zero payment for a long time. Be realistic. I mean, I looked at my bills and things, and I know certain companies are reducing payments. I mean, some companies just did it outright, right? Insurance companies are dropping premiums, things like that, and that's great, but to just assume that you don't have any responsibility in the given time isn't the way to go about it.
Yeah, and again, to reiterate, the executive order here in Arizona, and every state's going to be different, so I would encourage you to research, what's going on in your specific jurisdiction. But here in Arizona, that moratorium on evictions does not mean that you're not financially responsible
Correct.
for
Good
paying
point.
the rent. So you do have to be proactive, because the moratorium is an incentive to work things out. It is not a freebie. So you have to know where you stand, and the only way to know where you stand is to be proactive.
Absolutely right. And so some people are like, oh, free, I don't have to pay rent. And it started with residential tenants, if I remember correctly. Like you couldn't evict residential tenants. Then the executive order was talking about commercial tenants. Talk to me a little bit about this force majeure clause and what that means.
So a force majeure clause is essentially a clause that is present in many, many contracts, but not all contracts. And it says that due to circumstances beyond your control, an act of God, an act of war, an act of the government, a public health crisis, things of this nature, the contract may be terminated or the parties may be released from their obligations. They are not all the same. So a force majeure is like, is a descriptive word for a type of a clause, but not every one of those clauses is written the same. So you have to know what's in your specific contract. And again, some contracts don't have them at all. In some jurisdictions, the absence of that clause does not mean that the law won't read force majeure into the contract if you were to have to go to court over it. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be proactive and try and work it out with your landlord.
So we're talking about this clause is specifically for this situation that we're in right now. I can guarantee you 100% of the leases from this point on, we're going to have that in there.
It's interesting. I did a deal in December. Well, you mentioned the Billy Cook thing. So I bought a business, and just for myself, it's the first time I'm taking a stab at being an entrepreneur. And I went back and I revisited. I wrote the contract myself, and it did not have a force majeure clause in it. And it was one of those things where I was incentivized because of who I was dealing with to have a document that was short, sweet, and to the point. And so even though it was a rather complicated transaction, it was only a 4-page contract. If it was one of those things where I was dealing with a very sophisticated party on the other side, and they were represented by an attorney, but they wanted something simple. If you're dealing with a sophisticated party on the other side and you're not going to hesitate to have a 16 or 20-page document or a 40-page document, depending on the transaction, you throw everything plus the kitchen sink in there, and then the force majeure clause obviously makes the cut. You know? But you're cutting out a lot of this boilerplate stuff. And so not every document is going to have it. And some landlords just stylistically, because they like to keep business simple and because our society has, been going through a really easy period in our lives. I mean, yeah, we lived through 9/11 and we had the recession. These were, these are real events, and I don't mean to minimize them. But the foundation of our society and our lifestyle has not been disrupted in this way, at least not in my lifetime.
No.
And so, it's not necessarily lawyers, but landlords and people who are drafting agreements for themselves certainly are leaving these things out, in recent history, because why? It didn't occur to you that you needed to put these things in. So,
Moving
well,
forward.
and from a tenant's situation now, stepping into an agreement, moving forward,
Yeah,
they know kind of what to look for.
You're
going to
want that for sure as a tenant.
You're going to want that. I won't get into specifics with our lease here, but we have it in there. But then it kind of like the last line of it wipes it out. It's like, what's the point of having it in? I'll show it to you after this. It's like
Interesting.
So I read it and I was like, and me signing it, and I had an attorney reviewing it when we signed it. We didn't really focus too much because that.
But again, you don't assume that you're ever going to need something like that. When we've never seen a government mandate force closure of business.
And same
across
with
the board.
Business interruption insurance too.
Yeah, I say exactly.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
But it's highly possible, and I've reviewed a couple of policies specifically for that recently. They don't all cover this event.
No.
Because business interruption insurance is often tied to a physical loss. So you would be compensated for your business interruption in the event, say, that the building burns down.
Yes.
But not, and even for an act of God, say, where a tornado came through and tore the building down.
Shit,
you would be,
here?
Well, no, but I'm just saying in
just
general, you would be compensated for that business interruption with your insurance policy. But because there's no other insurable loss to tie the business interruption to, it's very difficult to make that claim right now unless you have some other specific policy or rider that speaks to this type of issue.
Pandemic.
Right.
Well,
and who had that before? Nobody. And I bet you they're going to start to sell a lot of that insurance going forward.
It is going to be big.
Day by day, things are changing too, because in the last 48 hours, we're seeing a lot more chatter about the billing companies. Their willingness to work with gyms. If you're not providing continued service, if your doors aren't open, all of these things, they're refusing to bill on your behalf because of the kickback or the pushback that they're getting. And things like that. So if you don't have, let's say you're not a training business, but you're just a traditional gym, and you have no ability to serve anybody, that might be a different situation than a personal training gym that can still do some sort of business in the interim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is a tough situation.
It is.
So just to fill you in, so there's companies like ABC Financial and ASF, and these are the companies that kind of work with like big global gyms, and they do all the billing. So they maintain all, and they have the software. So they do all the contracts and billing. and guaranteed they're getting chargeback after chargeback after chargeback. They said by April 15th, we're shutting off all billing to all, so you can't even bill your clients. Mind Body is what we use, and there's these other companies out there where we're still operating. We're not considered closed in our heads. We're still providing a service. You saw it out there.
Right.
And our clients are happily paying for it. So
for those listening, we don't have clients in the gym.
Right.
Tim's trainer is doing a virtual workout.
Virtual. And so I don't know where you go into the law here, but where's that? Where are the gym owners, if they're billing companies just saying, hey, we don't want to deal with these chargebacks that like they're having globally, we're going to cut your billing off too.
Well, what your legal rights are and what you need to do to survive are probably two totally different things. Certainly you have a service agreement with that, whatever that third-party billing entity is. Again, similar to the lease situation, the first thing you need to do is go look at your contract. What are your rights and obligations under the four corners of that agreement? In that specific instance, they've obviously made a company-wide decision to change their policy given these issues because they're overwhelmed by people trying to cancel their gym memberships or chargebacks or what have you.
So they just shut them off.
But communication is going to be the most important because I guarantee you that they don't want to be shut down. They're doing this, they're taking this measure probably because they're short-staffed right now, right? Their people are either staying home, working from home, what have you, and they're being overwhelmed. Maybe it's one of those things where they need to implement some sort of a gateway between the customer who they're billing and themselves and have you be the intermediary to sort of vet whether or not charges can be processed. I think you need to be proactive and then you, again, modify the contract because in my mind, if that's the way that their approach, you shouldn't be paying them what you were paying them before. Their percentage needs to change and get that in writing.
This is chaos, man. This is chaos.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it falls back to the agreement, obviously. Read that, and then opening up the line of communication. So you work with clients here in Arizona. You say Kentucky. Where else?
I'm also licensed to practice law in Kentucky, and then I have my license to practice is pending in the state of Oklahoma and in the state of Colorado. So I'm not licensed there yet. I can't give legal advice in those jurisdictions, but I have done strategic consulting across the nation. I've been back and forth to New York a lot, working with the aviation industry there historically, and not working as a lawyer, but doing, just giving general business advice and strategy advice for how those entities can accomplish whatever their objectives are. And so, I can't necessarily look at a contract and represent you in court and say California or any other state. I can't give you that legal advice, but if you've got business concerns, things you want to run by that aren't, dealing with the laws of that specific jurisdiction, I'd be happy to help.
Okay.
And to your point, you said this is chaos, and we had a team meeting with the partners at the firm. I think it was 2 weeks ago, sort of like a week after all this started to unfold. And my managing partner, Jordan Rose, she said that lawyers are built for chaos, so suit up and let's get out there and let's help our clients survive this. And our objective is all of our clients should survive this. I mean, we might be battered, but we will emerge stronger over time, and that's the same thing that we want our clients. We want them to feel that, be empowered by that. Good, bad, or indifferent. This is happening to everybody, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned I've got my own small business. We're shut down right now. Our factory is closed. My family's got some business interests that I've been working in and around for many years. They're shut down and closed. Everybody's feeling this. So, the old misery loves company adage, rings true. Don't despair. Keep your head up and pay attention. The hardest part, we were talking about that before we started the show, is the uncertainty. It's difficult to plan to emerge from this because we don't know where the bottom is, but that also doesn't mean sit around and do nothing. Certainly take advantage of being at home with your families and doing the things that you love to do while you're at home. Try and find some enjoyment out of that, but be thinking ahead. Let your subconscious mind play out all the inevitabilities that this situation could bring to us, and have an idea in your mind of where you want to go if those things should happen.
I love it.
Great advice.
Yeah, and it's right in line with the things that we talk about consistently. Nobody should be sitting around waiting for somebody else to come along and save their ass.
Yep.
Like, this is an opportunity to progress. I mean, we have gym owners that are still growing and winning right now. It's just how you go about it. What path are you going to take? What decisions do you need to make? Do you need to contact your landlord or an attorney? Do you need to talk to your billing agent? But don't sit around and just expect somebody to come in and that check to be funded, and all of a sudden here we are 3 months from now and everything's normal, because it's not going to be that way, period.
Right. Of all the businesses out there, I mean, there's still that are some like Costco's open and these the drugstores are open. the training business, like ours and the ones that we work with the clients, we're in a really good position because virtually we're still collecting, and we did this poll in our group. Said out of all the cancellations, well, how much money, like revenue, are you retaining? And we just did, 100%, 90, 80, 70, on average, it was about 67%. We're still taking in, like, that was 67% of the revenue that they were making, they're making now. And so versus zero. There's gyms that shut off billing completely. They don't have a way to service clients virtually. And so we're in a really good, like, decent position. We're holding strong.
Well, if you can, let's just use that figure. If you can retain 67% of your revenue stream and then attack your expenses like your rent and your insurance and some of the other things that you're going to have to deal with, and you're fortunate enough to get one of those PPP loans if you have people on payroll, you can absolutely emerge from this stronger.
Oh, yeah.
So, be proactive.
And that is absolutely the position that most of our clients are in, and that's why we're feeling pretty good.
And it
Coming
goes back
out
to
of this really good.
And there's always opportunity in chaos, right? You guys, obviously, there's a need.
Right.
Your position, what you're going to be doing it's probably never been greater for those types of conversations.
Yeah, no, we're very busy, and we're grateful to be in a position A, where we're working, but B, our job is to help people.
Yeah.
And so that's very gratifying, and we love that. So. Just stay adaptable, and if you need help, you need advice, you need a professional to come in and help you evaluate what your options are. That's what we're there for. But it's also something that if you feel like it's not in the cards for you because you have cash flow constraints right now, take a deep breath, sit down. You get frustrated as you're reading something. The language is dense. I don't know, you're in the gym business. Do a couple push-ups, take a few deep breaths, and then get back at it. Don't.
Great advice. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop your email here. It's atrenk, Trenk, at roselawgroup.com. We'll put that in.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Is there a subject line you want them to use so they know they came from the show?
Just put the name of the podcast and
Built to Grow.
Yeah.
So put Built to Grow in the subject line. If you want to get a hold of Adam, if you got questions, if you need help, if you want him to maybe find somebody in your state that can help represent you. He's a very smart guy. We've been talking about this. The fact that he's already worked with gyms locally here is a great asset because he understands the business. I think you need to reach out to this guy. This is probably one of the biggest things you just need to outsource and be done with for a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. They're going to negotiate on your behalf. That could be tens of thousands of dollars. It's a no-brainer, guys. And you check it off the list. And that's really like a mental thing here that I think you guys can benefit from. So what else? We good? What's whiskey?
Whiskey. Whiskey and horses are next, huh?
Sounds good to me.
We said
my kind of Friday.
Yes. Well, good, Adam. Thanks for coming on the show. That was a massive help, and I think the big takeaway here is take action. Reach out to Adam. You got his email address, guys. This is unprecedented times, just like Adam said. You can't sit on your hands, like Randy said. Take action. We can come out of this stronger. Be positive. Yeah, do some push-ups too. All right, guys. Until next time, keep changing lives.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.